It is now my privilege to introduce the Deputy Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation, Polly Trottenberg. As the #2 official and Chief Operating Officer, she supports Secretary Buttigieg in providing leadership and strategic vision for the department. With more than 25 years in the public sector, Deputy Secretary Trottenberg has worked at all levels of government. She has served as New York City's Transportation Commissioner, as well as Assistant Secretary and Undersecretary for Policy at the Department of Transportation during the Obama administration. As a member of the AFL-CIO Transportation Trades Department Executive Committee, I've had the opportunity to speak with Deputy Secretary Trottenberg during her discussions with U.S. union leaders, but I've also talked with her personally about several different issues and many different issues. And she has welcomed the opportunity to learn more about ALPR's perspective, which is much appreciated. In the areas of achieving one level of safety in transportation, securing the flight deck, and maintaining first officer qualification, experience, and requirements, she knows how we feel, right? And she's been very helpful. Importantly, we have also discussed how the U.S. airline industry can open the doors of opportunity and break down barriers that may currently prevent women, people of color, and others from pursuing aviation careers, while at the same time maintaining high standards. Safety standards. Deputy Secretary Trottenberg has been committed to hearing the voice of aviation labor. This is a very labor-aware administration. She has recognized airline pilots' dedication to ensuring a safe, secure air transportation system now and in the future. So please join me with a warm welcome for Deputy Secretary of Transportation, Polly Trottenberg.
Thank you so much, Captain DePete. I'm a New Yorker, and I think of myself as a fast talker, but I don't know. I think I've met my match. First of all, it is so great to be here. Thank you. Can I call you Captain? You know, we often call our secretary affectionately Secretary Pete. Can I call you Captain Joe? Captain Joe, first of all, thank you for your leadership and how fiercely you defend your membership. You know, you mentioned being on the AFL-CIO Executive Board. I've talked to some of your colleagues, and they have described you as a fierce trade unionist in the best sense of that word. So thank you so much for your leadership. And ALPA, thank you for inviting me to be the opening keynote speaker at your Air Safety Forum. I think I understand this is the first time you all have been together since the pandemic in person. I'm delighted to be here on behalf of the Biden administration and Secretary Buttigieg. I'm sorry, because it sounds like I missed a great binational party last night. But anyways, it is exciting to be here. And, you know, I just want to sort of mention, Captain DePete, you spoke about our secretary, and I'll just let you in on a little secret. I think he loves aviation. He loves all the modes, but I think he loves aviation the most. And I appreciate you recognizing his leadership. It's a field where he has become really passionate about safety, about working with the workforce, so it has been a lot of fun. I just want to say, on a personal note, I am actually the proud daughter of a World War II veteran who dreamed of being a pilot. But alas, the Trottenberg genes are not tall ones, and my father was neither tall nor heavy enough to be a pilot, so he actually became a bombardier navigator in World War II. And I grew up hearing his stories about flying missions over Germany, about parachuting into the English Channel, and about being proudly in one of the planes that flew over France on D-Day. So I like to think I have some aviation in my blood. And I know one of the themes of this conference here today is continuing to address the health and safety and workforce impacts of COVID. We all know what a difficult couple of years it has been for commercial air travel and for all of you throughout the industry, pilots, flight attendants, ground crews, air traffic controllers, aviation safety specialists, and of course the passengers. And I want to take a minute, again, to acknowledge on behalf of the Biden administration and Secretary Buttigieg all the sacrifices that this industry has made, and to express our gratitude for the hardworking members of ALPA and the other pilot and aviation unions, of course, including AFA, NATCA, PASS, and others. I want to recognize also particularly during COVID the important work this sector did in helping to get, as you mentioned, Captain DePete, medicine, supplies, et cetera, when they were desperately needed throughout the country. I also want to take a minute, of course, to acknowledge the recent 21st anniversary of 9/11 and the important role that your member played in the aftermath of that most terrible time. I know you've had a commemoration, and I just want to add my words. Let us never forget. The aviation community has overcome great adversity at different times in history, but throughout it all, there has been a lot to celebrate. The industry is recovering with some bumps along the way this summer, but Americans are flying again, and we thank ALPA for getting them there safely and securely. As we all know, we are experiencing, as you heard from Captain DePete, a really safe era in commercial aviation, but we never take it for granted. We're always looking to go to that next level. And with the leadership of ALPA, ATA, and others advocating for workers, increasingly aviation careers, as you heard from Captain DePete, are providing good jobs with good wages and good benefits that can support a family. It's also a really exciting time with all the new technological innovations that have the promise of making our aviation system even safer and more efficient while bringing in new industries like drones and commercial space. But we also recognize, Captain DePete, you talked about it, that integrating these new industries into our national airspace safely will require a lot of work by the FAA and all our partners. And again, I'm happy to reiterate the news that Captain DePete mentioned that I think a lot of you in this audience know, that last Friday, I had the privilege of being at the National Space Council meeting chaired by Vice President Kamala Harris in Houston. At that meeting, the leadership from the NTSB and the FAA did sign that MOU on how our two agencies can collaborate together on investigating commercial space accidents. This agreement will clarify FAA and NTSB's shared goal and respective responsibilities in ensuring commercial space is safe, that our regulations are regularly updated, and that the lessons we learn are included in operation plans sooner as opposed to later. I'd like to take a minute to thank NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy, Billy Nolan, our acting FAA administrator, and Calvin Coleman, FAA's newly appointed Associate Administrator for Commercial Space Transportation, bit of a mouthful, that title, and all their teams. They did amazing work, I think, in negotiating this very important agreement. And I think it bodes well for a really strong safety partnership in the years to come. As we all know, the number of commercial space launches is really growing by leaps and bounds. The FAA has also been working hard on something we know is important to ALPA, and Captain DePete, you mentioned it, including the accuracy of those hazard areas that are around activities like commercial space launches. We want to continue to improve that process of targeting that airspace. And we've been working on a bunch of new tools, the FAA in collaboration with the pilots, that will enable better rerouting of flights so that instead of having to reroute hundreds of flights, we can be much more accurate in our air control. And we're hoping also that this greater data sharing with space launch operators is going to allow us to open airspace sooner and safely. And as we tackle better safety operations, thanks to President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, the FAA also now has historic resources to invest in aviation safety and infrastructure. Last month, the FAA awarded nearly $400 million for airfield safety and other improvement projects at 169 airports in 40 states across the country. I hope some of these improvements will make your jobs easier: new and improved facilities, repaired runways, better lighting and signage, and additional equipment for operations and maintenance. And this summer, one of the new programs that the FAA got under the bipartisan infrastructure law, $1 billion to invest in improving airport terminals all over the country, expanding airport capacity, increasing energy efficiency, providing greater accessibility for individuals with disabilities, and building new air traffic control towers. You know, I'm very excited about those investments. We're making them in airports across the country, but as you all know, the bipartisan infrastructure law is much broader than that. We're investing in roads, bridges, rail, ports, you name it. And as we invest in all those operations and facilities, we're also investing in what we all know is the most important part of the aviation system: people. It's why the Biden administration made sure the American Rescue Plan had strong job protections, and we thank ALPA for your role in helping to get that passed. We've also been working closely with ALPA and ATA to keep pilots and flight attendants safe in the air and ground crews at the gate. I'm proud that Secretary Buttigieg and the FAA leadership took a strong, public, zero-tolerance stand against unruly passengers who've harassed, threatened, and sometimes injured airline staff. Our policy has helped reduce those terrible incidents, but we're going to continue, Captain DePete, you'll be happy, we're going to continue our focus on ensuring that airline personnel are treated respectfully by the traveling public. For flight attendants, we are working hard, who have worked so hard during this pandemic time. We're working on a new rule requiring longer rest periods between shifts to ensure that they can do their jobs effectively. And we are working the one we know is on the top of your list, Captain DePete, secondary flight deck barriers, as you discussed this morning, which was first published in the Federal Register in July. I know it's taking a little longer than everyone wanted. The Administrative Procedures Act is not easy. We have a complex process, but we know this rule is a priority for administration, and we are going to get it done. Thank you. Just applaud for that one. And I will just note that Captain Joe has been a relentless champion on that one for sure, from me to the Secretary, I believe all the way up to the highest levels of the White House. I also want to be very clear on something this group cares about and that you spoke so eloquently about this morning. We fully supported Congress's establishment of the 1,500 flight hour requirement for commercial flights, and we know how much it supports safe operations. Just one more thing I want to mention on safety. I think a lot of you know FAA is committed to thoroughly implementing the Aircraft Certification, Safety, and Accountability Act and the recommendations from all the independent reviews. In the past year and a half, we've undertaken several important safety steps to respond to what occurred with the Boeing 737 MAX. And I want to again thank our FAA Acting Administrator, Billy Nolan, for his extraordinary leadership and that of his team as well. Some things that we've done now to make the process safer. FAA employees now have a way to confidentially and securely raise safety concerns. We've implemented greater protections for manufacturer employees who determine safety compliance, including a direct line, confidential, to designated FAA individuals to raise any concerns. And as our new aircraft are certified, we're expanding the use of independent groups of both internal and external safety experts, adding a new set of eyes to make sure we haven't missed anything. Together, we know these actions will continue to strengthen safety, but we always know, I know this group knows this, there'll always be more to do. And that's why I just want to say how grateful we are to your continued support as we continue to strengthen our safety and security culture. We know that the leaders in this room are critical safety partners. And I think, as such, we are also excited to partner with you, and it was exciting to hear you speak about it, Captain DePete, to welcome that next generation of pilots to this profession. Supporting and developing a diverse aviation workforce is a critical priority for the Biden administration, and I know for ALPA. As you all know, these professions can not only provide a great living, but they do capture your heart. My father wanted to be one, but he had to settle for being a bombardier navigator, which for him was certainly a life-changing experience. And we know, as you mentioned, we need to capture imagination at a young age. Captain DePete, you were saying you sometimes talk to kids as young as kindergarten. We've been developing different aviation workforce development programs to fund organizations who are on the front lines of identifying that new talent pool. Earlier this year, the FAA awarded $5 million in grants to 15 high schools across the U.S. to fund aviation classes to develop that next generation of pilots. And if we can get kids' attention in the classroom, we are capturing it on consoles. Again this year, FAA had K-12 students design airports using the video game Minecraft. I have to say, when you see the stuff they created, you know we're going to be in good hands. It was pretty cool. And speaking of that next generation, I also want to take a moment to acknowledge Dudone Kazembe as the recipient of the Aero Club Foundation Scholarship. And I also want to take a minute, of course, to acknowledge Phil Washington, who will be accepting the Airport of the Year Award for his role as CEO of Denver International Airport. I had the privilege of serving with Phil on the Biden-Harris transition team, and of course, we're so excited about his nomination to be the next FAA administrator. We hope he will be ready to join Billy and Brad and the team very, very soon. Let me just take another minute to also congratulate all your other awardees. Sounds like quite an amazing group of folks this year, and thank them for all their leadership. So I just want to close by saying, and I love what you say, Captain DePete, about, one of the things we're proud of is what we do for a living. And I am proud to be part of an administration that, as you point out, is clear in its goals and priorities, focusing particularly on partnering with unions all across this country to, as you say, to provide that dignity of work, those wages, those benefits, those opportunities for advancement. Proud to be part of that administration. Proud to be part of an administration that's focused on climate change, on equity. One thing I love about President Biden, he is clear in his priorities. And so it is an exciting and challenging and fascinating time to be working in transportation. We have so many exciting opportunities ahead of us to grow the aviation industry, to make it ever safer and more secure, and ensure that the aviation workforce is strong and growing. At DOT and FAA, we remain so grateful for ALPA's partnership, and we look forward working together to keep our skies safe and to support you, the pilots, who support us. I will just say, on a note of gratitude, I have traveled all over the country this summer. And one joke that the Secretary makes, but it's an important note to close on, when we get on an airplane, we may be thinking about a lot of different things. Are we going to get to where we need to go? Do we have to make a phone call? What are they? But one thing we really take for granted is that we're going to get where we're going safely. And that's a tribute to all of you in this room. So thank you for that. And by the way, I want to know, can I get on the Jump Seat app? Sounds amazing. Anyways, I will close with that. Again, thank you for the great partnership. Thanks for having me here today. It's been just a terrific experience to be with you all. Thanks so much.